friends, welcome back to the Kirkpatrick Podcast. It is Vanessa, and as you can tell, I am in my Spain jersey. It is World Cup season, and I thought, what better thing to talk about and compare with evaluation than the World Cup? So the reason I'm not in a USA jersey is because truly Spain is playing right now, and I'm pretty sure the game is over, and we have won and beat Austria 3-0. So go Spain. So I want to talk a little bit about something that I see, and you know me, I always compare kind of what's going on in work and what's going on in the world, and I always tie it back to measurement and evaluation. And so one thing that I think about or thought about was this idea of what a scoreboard really is. And what we're watching is everyone confusing the scoreboard with the actual truth of what's happening in the game. So, leading indicators in this case start to get ignored in favor for one number. The most important number, right, is did you score or did you not? 3-0. We scored 3 times after scoring 4 times on Uruguay on Sunday. And the thing is that as I'm watching, and kind of looking at, how these teams came to be and all the training that goes into it, realize we're watching a single match be treated like something that it proves something that it actually doesn't. And we're watching every single team get judged against the same bar when, in all honesty, I think that success means something different for every single team. So today we're going to use this tournament. One of my teams, Spain, obviously, the other, the US, and a tiny little island nation that you probably never heard of before this summer to make an argument that I make constantly in a different way. The fact is, the scoreboard is truly lying to you. And here is what we have to look at instead. So let's start with one of my teams, Spain. So Spain plays a very different style of soccer that, if you're not actually paying attention, looks boring. Like if you look at teams like Brazil, they are attackers. See, Spain doesn't chase the ball. They don't hoof it forward and hope. They keep it sideways, backwards, in triangles, and sometimes for what feels like truly, because I watch these games, for an entire half before away from anything happening near the goal. It's called tiki-taka, and it's been Spain's identity for about 2 decades. And here's why this matters. So a goal is actually a lagging indicator. It tells you what already happened. By the time it hits the scoreboard, the passage of play that produced it is already over. So decades ago, Spain's federation made a bet. You obsess over the leading indicators instead. Possession percentage, passing accuracy, territorial control, and the goals will take care of themselves over time. And they're not managing the outcome directly. They're managing the conditions that produce the outcome. And that's exactly the distinction I want every learning leader listening to this to sit with. If the only thing that you're reporting on is the completion rate, the satisfaction score, the number that shows up at the very end on the scoreboard, you're reporting a lagging indicator, but presenting that as strategy. The leading indicators look more like manager reinforcement behavior, early adoption rates, the frequency of coaching conversations happening in the flow of work. They're less satisfying to put on a slide because, if we're honest, they don't feel like a finish line. They don't feel like a big number to report. But they're the only thing that tell you, while there's still time to do something about it, whether you're actually heading toward the result that you want. And if you wait for the lagging indicator to tell you the truth, you've already lost your window to change the outcome. Now, here's a part of Spain's story that matters even more. So, between 2008 and 2012, Spain won 3 major titles: a European Championship, the World Cup, which I will come back to, and another European Championship. Now, really quickly, the World Cup. The first time Spain won the World Cup, I have the best picture of my father lifting my grandfather, my tiny grandfather. My dad's 6'1". My grandfather was like, I don't know, maybe 5'7", lifting him up out of sheer excitement. I was in the city watching the game. I shot down to Newark, New Jersey to go to the Ironbound where all the Spaniards were, and we were all celebrating and having fun. And there was sangria in Tupperware containers, which is super fun, and just a really great experience. And it was just, such a beautiful moment, and definitely one of those core memories. So I'm hoping that July 18th, when actually the final is played in New Jersey, Spain will be in it, and I'll be able to relive this memory with my kids. So everyone, cross your fingers. Okay, back to the episode. So when we look at those 3 championships in isolation, it actually looks like this like hot streak, but it actually wasn't. It was the output of a system built for over more than a decade before that. One style of play taught identically from the academy level all the way to the senior national team. So that by the time those players arrived on the biggest stage, they'd already be speaking the same soccer language their entire lives. And it's part of one of the Kirkpatrick foundational principles, this idea that you can't measure the impact of an isolated event. Also, side note, if you are familiar with our foundational principles, we have added 3 new ones, and they are part of my book, Building a Culture of Evaluation, the new Kirkpatrick Model for Performance and Innovation, available on Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble, through ATD Press. So please go grab that, and you can learn more about the foundational principles, and you get a lovely companion guide to go along with your course. Back to the episode. So look, at the end of the day, you can't, like everyone asks me, Vanessa, how do you measure a training event? You can't, and you don't. And you don't want to, because it's not going to produce the results, any results that you want. A single training session does not create lasting behavior change. A single tournament doesn't create a dynasty. What creates both is a sustained system. Reinforcement, consistency, and time. When someone asks me why their one great workshop didn't move the needle, this will always be the answer. Nothing sustainable comes from one isolated event. It comes from what surrounds that event before, during, and after it. And I'll be honest about, where my own team stands right now. The golden generation, the Pique and everyone, that they're gone, right? They're retired. This is a rebuilding roster built around a new generation. And honestly, oh my gosh, this one teenager, he's 18 years old, Lamine Yamal, which, by the way, if you're not watching the games on Telemundo or Univision or whatever it is, in Spanish basically, I love the way he yells, Lamine Yamal, Lamine Yamal. Anyway, Lamine plays like he's been doing this for 15 years. And here's the question that I've sat with as a fan. The same question that every stakeholder has to sit with inside their own organization. What does success actually look like for this team at this stage right now? It's not the 2010 bar. If I judge this Spain team against the standard set by that golden generation, I'll completely miss what's actually happening right in front of me. It's a program building towards something new. And success has to be defined relative to where you actually are, not where you used to be. So let's talk about the tournament's co-host, one of their co-hosts next, because the US team hands us a very similar lesson, but the flip side of it. So this team is part of the best World Cup, and it's what best World Cup group stage ever. They absolutely destroyed their group. They scored a program record-breaking 8 goals during 3 matches. And sports writers are already asking out loud whether this is the best American team that has ever taken the field. Now, yes, they did lose their final group match to Turkey. So, which actually is it? Is it a historically great team or a team that just lost? Now, here's the answer that I would give, and it's the same answer I'd give an executive staring at a dashboard. Both data points are true, but neither one on its own actually tells you the story. The group stage record is a real leading indicator. It says something legitimate about depth, about form, about confidence. But the skeptics raising an eyebrow are right about one thing. None of it means anything without a result in the knockout rounds. When the stakes change and the game state changes completely. Now that is the actual test, and we're in the middle of the knockout round now. And the US won last night, so incredible. Now, the loss to Turkey. Well, their coach, the US coach, actually, if you observe what happened, he made 9 changes to his starting lineup for that match. 9. That's not a team in free fall. That's a coach making a deliberate call. With qualification already secured, he wanted to manage his roster ahead of the knockout stage. If you read that a 3-2 scoreline without context of what it produced, and you walk away with exactly the wrong conclusion, right? If you just read the headline, yeah, you would say, wow, they had a crappy game. But there was a reason behind maybe taking a little bit of that loss. And this happens constantly in our work world. A cohort number might dip for 1 quarter. Somebody in a leadership meeting declares that the program's not working, without ever asking whether that quarter also happened to include, let's say, a hiring freeze, a reorg, or half the team out on leave. When you have a single data point stripped of its context, it will lie to you every single time. So before you react to any one number, it's important that you ask what actually produced it. Now, let me tell you about this team. Pains me a little bit to talk about it. But they truly have stolen this tournament, and not one that you'd expect. So, Cape Verde, it's an island nation off the coast of West Africa. The population, I think, is like 525,000 people. It's smaller than every U.S. state except for Wyoming. It's their first World Cup appearance in this country's history. They made my team draw 0-0. Spain versus this brand new team that just came out of left field. They also drew on Uruguay. And they won in their group. And they became the smallest nation by population to ever reach the knockout round in the World Cup. I want you to sit with what success means in that sentence, because it's not the same definition of success that applies to Spain, Brazil, Argentina. Nobody inside Cape Verde's federation sat down before this tournament and declared their expectation was to lift the trophy. Their success was always going to be measured against a different, yet equally legitimate bar, one defined by their own reality, their own resources, and their own stakeholders. This is return on expectations in its purest form. In the book, I make the case that ROE has to be defined by what your actual stakeholders said mattered, negotiated before you begin, not a borrowed universal number that has nothing to do with your context. A small nonprofit's learning function and a Fortune 100 company's learning function should not be judged against the same bar any more than Cape Verde in Spain should be judged against the same bar. Let someone else's scorecard define your success, and you'll either set yourself up to fail against an irrelevant standard, or you'll miss a genuine, remarkable win because it doesn't look like the win someone else had. Cape Verde reaching the round of 32 is one of the greatest achievements of this entire tournament. Full stop. Not because of where that result sits in the bracket, but because of what it means relative to who they are. So here's what I want you to take from all of this. 1, I do know a little bit about sports. 2, 3 teams, 3 lessons, 1 argument. Spain shows us that leading indicators, the process, the conditions, and the things that you can actually influence matter more than the lagging number everyone is watching. The USA shows us that a strong-looking result still isn't proof of anything until it holds up under real pressure, and that a single distorted data point can send you to the wrong conclusion entirely. And then Cape Verde shows us that success was never a universal number to begin with. It's whatever your actual stakeholders said mattered. Before your next report goes out the door, ask yourself 1 question. Which scorecard am I actually being measured against? A benchmark someone handed you because it was easy to find? Or the expectation your real stakeholders defined? Because if you're chasing someone else's scorecard, it will always lie to you about how you are really doing. This is the whole game. And this is why I say that evaluation is the unlock for the future of organizational health and performance. Because the teams and organizations that win long-term aren't the ones that are obsessing over the final score. They're the ones who know, long before the whistle blew, exactly what they're measuring and why. So friends, this one's it for me. So whoever you're rooting for the rest of this tournament, I hope you watch it a little bit differently now. And if you need help defining the right scorecard for your own organization instead of borrowing someone else's, that's exactly the conversation we have at Kirkpatrick Partners. So head over to kirkpatrickpartners.com, shoot us a note, and I will catch you in the next episode. Bye, you all.